Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Nelson for Catholic Newsbreak. Here's what's happening this week in the news. We begin with news from around the world. Without challenging any fundamental tenet of China's constitution or its 1949 revolution, Chinese activist Chen Guangcheng has drawn attention to the country's forced abortion and sterilization practices, leading to a crackdown by the government on his movement and prohibitions on contact with foreigners and the media. The prominence of the self-taught blind lawyer rose when he escaped from house arrest in Shandong province on April 22nd and arrived at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing several days later. Shen told reporters police were in his home waving clubs in front of his wife. China has accused the U.S. of meddling in the country's internal affairs. Chai Ling, founder and president of All Girls Allowed, an organization that campaigns to defend women facing forced abortions in China, told a U.S. congressional hearing in Washington on May 3rd that Chen Guangcheng is not just a dissident, but a folk hero in China. He's a defender of women, children, and the poor. Ling said that Chen has worked tirelessly on behalf of women who face forced abortion and sterilization at the hands of officials who should be protecting their citizens' rights. Chen, who is still in a Beijing hospital suffering from intestinal problems, has decided he will spend time in the United States, and it appears the Chinese government will allow him to study abroad. However, arrangements have not been made yet. In news from the Vatican, to mark the 50th anniversary of Vatican II, several conferences will be held this year around Rome, including an event at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. Rome Reports spoke with experts at the conference about the Council's importance in church history, the liturgy, and how it continues to affect us today.
This coming month of October will mark 50 years since the Second Vatican Council was officially opened. To look into how this council changed the Catholic Church, several conferences are taking place around Rome. One of them was held at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross, which focused on the Council's role in the new evangelization.
In the long history of the Church, 50 years is really not that much. 50 years later, the Council is still a work in progress.
We looked into ecumenism and the Second Vatican Council, also the reform of the liturgy and the Church, and the mystery of the Church through the Second Vatican Council.
The Council decided about some very important questions about liturgy, the reform of the liturgy, the renewal of the liturgy, and the constitution of the Church in Lumen Gentium, and about some questions like the freedom of religion and consciousness, and the very important constitutio about the pastoral management and work of the Church.
And then, a key document of the Second Vatican Council titled Nostra Aetate was also discussed. The document looked into the Church's relationship with non-Christians.
Less than 20 years after the end of World War II and the Holocaust, the Church was thinking of new ways of relating with people, a new way of relating to Jews. That's why it developed a declaration on its relationship with the Jewish community. But really, Nostra Aetate deals with the relationship between Church and non-Christians in general.
The conference was sponsored by Cardinal Reinhard Marx of Munich. The two-day conference was also a way to get ready for the coming year of faith.
Looking now at news from around the country, delegates at the General Conference of the United Methodist Church at the Tampa Convention Center voted against changing the wording in the Church's Book of Laws and Doctrines that says homosexual acts are incompatible with Christian teaching. They also defeated a proposal stating that church members they disagree about homosexuality. Two church pastors proposed changing the language in the Church's Book of Discipline as a way to clarify that church members disagree about whether homosexual activity is against the will of God. The proposals stirred strong reaction on both sides of the issue and caused a protest after the votes were tallied. Some delegates argued that this was a time to speak out on the issue and make a change, since the church body only meets every 4 years. Homosexual church members asked to be recognized for their sacred worth. Those who disagreed said changing the church's stance would cause confusion and a departure from traditional doctrine. The United Methodist Church has about 12 million members worldwide and 8 million members in the United States. The General Conference is the top policy-making body of the United Methodist Church. And finally in the news, when the World Church of the Power of God opened their new mega church on the outskirts of Sao Paulo on New Year's Day, 100,000 people were expected to attend. 2 million showed up. The Reverend Luis Medeiros, a senior pastor at the Neo-Pentecostal Church, said the numbers show how attracted people are to joining the church. The church's capacity is 150,000 people, making it one of the largest religious gathering places in South America. Reverend Medeiros and preachers regularly draw 30,000 people. What has been remarkable about the church is that its numbers have swelled in just 14 years since its establishment, and it grew in the world's most Catholic country, Brazil, which the Vatican says has 163 million Catholics. Evangelical churches like the World Church Power of God have made inroads in Latin America and the Caribbean, long a Catholic stronghold. Evangelicals, including Pentecostals, Baptists, and others, now count roughly 97.5 million followers in the region, according to data provided by a coalition of evangelical churches. Christina Vitel, an anthropologist at the Institute of Studies of Religion in Rio de Janeiro, said part of the reasons could be that evangelical churches adopt less rigid rules than the Catholic Church. They adapt to the customs and values seen today in society, such as the importance of financial prosperity. Marit Forday, a professor at the University of West Indies in Trinidad, who studies the spread of evangelical Protestantism in the Caribbean, said another reason could be that evangelical Christians take an active role in forming their relationship with Jesus. In response to the growing numbers of evangelicals, Father Jose Gregorio Milo Sanchez, director of the Latin American Bishops' Conference Department of Ecclesial Communion and Dialogue, said the Catholic Church is focusing on Latin America's youth and on creating dialogue between Catholics and evangelical movements. Well, that is all the information we have for you this time. Please stay with Catholic TV for more Catholic news. Until then, I'm Kevin Nelson, and I'll see you next time on Catholic Newsbreak.